So, Amber, hi.
Hi.
Been a long time.
It has.
Yeah.
A little while.
We used to work together. Kind of.
We did.
Well, it was more for it was for the same people.
Yeah. We did a lot of stuff together.
Yeah.
Filming.
Yeah. I used to see you on the events,
Yeah.
kind of flying around, whizzing around and stuff. I like to kick things off with a bit of a warm-up kind of thing. See where you're at.
Okay.
See if you any wrong answers you get, then it's like. You know.
Oh, there is a right and a wrong answer.
No, if we, I've interviewed guys on this before. You're the first lady.
Oh.
So I don't know how some of the things would normally play in the game of Sophie's Choice, because it tends to be geek stuff like Batman, Marvel, DC, and that. Although you did actually ask me before we sat down
I did, yeah.
if I was more a DC guy. So I might throw that in there last minute.
Okay.
In fact, that'll be my starter: Marvel or DC.
See, I'm going to say Marvel. Is this to stay? Yeah, to stay. But that's only because
Anyway,
I'm more of a
nice
Marvel family.
No, I like Marvel. I like it's it's all good. They've gone downhill in recent years, but whatever. Okay, train or bus?
Oh gosh, I don't do either, but I think I prefer the train.
Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter?
Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I've got to say.
For the kids.
I know it's not good to say in some Christian circles, but
No, definitely Lord of the Rings.
Autumn or spring?
Gosh. Autumn.
Really?
Yeah. I was thinking spring, but no, I love summer, but I think, I like autumn as well.
You like the season in which things die, as
Yeah.
opposed to the season in
And
which
we're
things
getting close
come.
to winter and the C word, so yeah.
Right, okay. Red or blue?
Red.
Costa or Starbucks?
Costa.
Yeah, I'm Costa. Starbucks, to me, I'm not being funny, but it tastes like Nat's pee.
No, it's just so expensive. I know I've seen a programme where they said the actual content of the caffeine in a lot of their drinks is hardly anything.
Yeah, well, but it tastes like that.
Yeah.
Like whenever I've had a coffee from Starbucks, it tastes like watered down.
But you paid £5 for it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. No, Costa all the way.
Yeah.
Dogs or cats?
Not really an either fan.
Right.
But gosh, I did have a cat, but we got rid of it.
when you say got rid of it.
No, we sent it to live with somebody who looked after it better and appreciated it more. I've always had cats, so we'll just say cats, even though I guess I'm not really either.
Yeah, I'd probably say I'm more of a cat person. Sorry, Cara.
Oh,
Sorry.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we've got a dog, little sausage dog. I love her to bits, but I always said I'd never get a dog. I had cats for most of my life, so I've got to say I probably am more of a cat person. Yeah. Sports game or live show?
Oh gosh, probably a live show. I'm not really a sports fan.
No, I just, it's like watching grass grow to me, to be honest. Lois Lane or Dana Scully?
Goodness me. Oh, I love Dana Scully. She's X-Files, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go Dana Scully.
Yes.
Takes me back to my high school days,
Boom.
watching X-Files.
Big Lois Lane fan, but for me, there's been so many Lois Lanes. There's only one Dana Scully. Simple as. Custard or cream?
I think cream.
90s or noughties?
90s.
All right, okay. What particularly about the 90s separates it?
Just I think I was still in school, just the music was better. It was just a carefree time.
Was it though?
Yeah,
was
it
the
was.
Music better? Well, I mean, admittedly, music has gone significantly downhill. Particularly in recent years, it's got to be said. 10-pin bowling or ice skating?
10-pin bowling. Don't like ice skating.
Yeah, I can't. I just don't want to be cold.
I don't want to get my fingers chopped off by a blade.
Yeah, came close once, real close.
No.
Dance music or hip hop?
Hip hop.
Right, okay. I got to confess, I don't really like either.
Oh right, okay.
But
I mean, my husband being a rapper and a hip hop artist.
I know, but I will say, and this isn't just to butter anyone up, but I have listened to Marvin's stuff, and I think for me a lot of it is what's associated with it.
Yeah.
So obviously I saw Marvin do his live stuff when we did the the Proclaim Trust stuff. And because of the lyrics, it just changes everything. Like for me, when I'm listening to someone singing about hose and other words, I'm just like, really? Yeah. I can't.
No, I agree, and that's why he does what he does. That's why his lyrical content is different. So
yeah. So fried chicken or pizza?
Gosh, pizza.
Pizza. Okay. Yeah, I think in my younger days I would have been a fried chicken man, but now I'm neither, because I got that many bloody dietary requirements. It's like flowers or chocolates.
Oh gosh, chocolate.
Yeah, it's got to be in it. What can you do with flowers? You can't eat flowers.
I try and say all the time, don't buy me chocolates. I'm trying to be good, but then they buy me chocolates and
I just bought Annie some flowers the other day, and I'm pretty sure she had an allergic reaction to them.
Oh my god!
And it's just like, what is the point of flowers?
Seriously. But I love flowers, but if it's a choice between flowers and chocolates, then it's chocolates.
Yeah. She said she'd rather have a plant, like a potted,
it lasts
because they die as well, don't they?
Yeah.
They just die. They're just useless. Spain or Japan?
Oh gosh, I've never been to Japan, but I would say Spain.
I've been to Japan.
Okay.
And I love it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's great.
Yeah.
I just, to me, Spain just feels like that. It's just your typical. It's where English people go on holiday.
I guess there's so many different places in Spain though, so you can get that English vibe, or you can go a little bit more Spanish. But I love sunshine. I love the beach. I love chilling.
I have to confess, that was the worst part about Japan, is that it's basically just English weather.
Yeah.
All you're doing is just swapping.
Yeah. And I can imagine it's just such a fast pace of life and so much going on. For me, I prefer it a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah, but I've never seen such efficiency and politeness from people. I've had the most polite customer service I've ever had in a McDonald's in Japan.
Yeah.
They hand you the money, the change back with both hands. They look you in the eye. Yeah. They talk directly to you rather than the person they're working with. So it's just completely different culture. Total respect for Japan. Grand Canyon or the pyramids?
I think probably the pyramids. I'd like to go to both of them things, both them places, but I'll say pyramids.
Yeah, it's something quite it's weird, isn't it? Because one is like a natural. Yeah. It's something that's like puts you in awe.
Yeah.
But it's natural, and the other one is man-made kind of feat of engineering. That,
just blows your mind.
Really blows your mind. A night of unbroken sleep or a day to yourself?
Oh, wow. I think I'd like a night of unbroken sleep. I can't even remember the last time I had that.
Really?
Yeah.
So because I always think if you choose a day to yourself,
you'll get the night of sleep.
Then, well, not necessarily, but like you could choose part of that day to sleep.
Right, okay.
So you could get kicking 4 to 6 hours of unbroken sleep and be like, right, now I want to do what I want with the rest of the day.
Yeah.
But I think as a parent, I have been in the position where actually I don't care about any day to myself. Just let me sleep, please, for the love of God.
Well, exactly. In the last 3 nights, my son has coughed. He's got a cough, and he's just been coughing at 3 o'clock in the morning for an hour. So I'd love a night of unbroken sleep now.
It does something to the psyche. It's I don't mind admitting. Scotland or Ireland?
Gosh. I don't know.
You don't want to offend.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I have been to both. I've only been to Scotland once on a work day, and I only flew there and came back. And there was more places I'd like to go in Scotland. So let's just say Scotland, because there are lots of places I'd like to go and visit in Scotland.
All right. Yeah. I've been to Scotland a few times, but I've never been to Ireland.
Okay.
So I'd probably say Ireland just so I can go.
But sorry, Irish friends, I'm not disrespecting you.
She hates the Irish. Unsubscribe. Here, right. You lose one, but you keep the other. Okay. Hearing or sight?
Oh gosh, that's really hard. I'm keeping my sight, I think. Yeah.
I think I'd have to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that freaks me out. Just that all the time.
Yeah, it's hard. I was looking at Azariah, my son, the other day, and I was just thinking, gosh, I do hope that I get to, continue to see his face for the rest of our lives, because I just think that'd be hard. But yeah.
And there are times when actually you wouldn't mind losing your hearing. It's
Can everyone just be quiet?
Yeah. Just for someone with misophonia, it's quite. The Notebook or Love Actually?
I'm keeping The Notebook.
Is the correct answer.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like The Notebook.
Yeah.
Not really a fan, gotta said, but I vehemently hate Love Actually.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. I despise it with
I don't know whether I've actually really watched it all. Yeah. Like, it's not one of those films, I know it's like a classic, but I don't even know if I've seen it all properly, so confession.
I personally think it should be called Not Love Actually, but that's just me. iTunes or Spotify?
Spotify. I don't use iTunes.
Yeah, I'm not sure anyone does these days. I'd be surprised if there's any like die-hard iTunes fans out there. Probably a bunch of people who back in the day bought loads of stuff through iTunes. I'm sticking with it. And the last one, Ant or Deck?
Oh gosh. I'm getting rid of one and keeping one.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping Ant and getting rid of Deck.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Hang on.
Deck's the smaller one.
Deck's the smaller one. Is it?
Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah, I think so, yeah,
This is the thing. No one knows.
He is, though, he is. I'm sure he is.
No one knows.
No, Ant's the taller one.
Which one's Ant and which one's Deck? No one knows.
I think it is, though. So I'm keeping Ant and getting rid of Deck.
I don't know if anyone in the US even knows
who
Ant and Deck are, so apologies, guys. As I said, we did used to work alongside each other together. Sort of. You want to tell people a little bit about maybe what that was?
So for the last 7 years, I've worked for a charity called Proclaim Trust, and that facilitates the work of Barry Woodward, who is a speaker. He's an author of a book called Once an Addict, and he goes around the UK sharing his story in prisons and churches and rehabs. And I've been the operations and events manager for that charity, and once a year we run the Fix Conference, which is a conference where we get like over 600 people in Bolton who've all been affected by addiction, and you used to film that for us and be involved in that day. You also film a wedding as well.
I did also film a wedding. Yes. I often tell people that I heard the best speech by a groom.
Oh, really?
At their wedding, yeah. Because obviously I used to film a lot of weddings, and so I heard a lot of speeches.
Yeah.
So they say,
Yeah.
like when you hear one wedding speech,
you've heard
you tend
them
to
all.
have heard them
Yeah.
all. But so your husband Marvin, also known, is he still known as Crown Freedom, or did he change his name?
He's matured. He's called Marvin Adama.
Okay.
So yeah.
Like I say, heard them all before speech, but then Marvin gets up to do his speech, and it essentially turned into an altar call and stuff. Yeah. But no, it's great. It's fantastic.
Well, the thing is, everyone else probably prepared their speech. He was probably the only person that didn't prepare anything, and yet he gets up and wings it. That's what he does.
That's usually the best, I think, when they prepare him and they're stood there with the shaky notes. It's like, so like Proclaim Trust, obviously, deals a lot with addicts and recovering addicts and people with a heart for addicts and all that. Yeah. Do you have any personal kind of experience in that world?
Yeah. So I've never been an addict myself, but I have been involved in alcohol and drugs, recreational use, growing up from 14, drinking in the park with my friends, then progressed to taking a little bit of amphetamines, and that progressed to ecstasy, and that progressed to cocaine. So it was just it was party. We went out Friday and Saturday and Sunday, sometimes Thursday. Right. You know, it was just all about living for the weekend and forgetting all your worries in the week. Right. Yeah.
But you would say that you weren't an addict?
Yeah, it wasn't an addiction. It was something that I did to forget about my worries. But I was never an addict. Right. No, and it never. Yeah, I wasn't an addict.
In the sense that if you said stop, You just...
Yeah, you know, there was times when I didn't take it. You know, I say we were out every weekend. We majority of the time were, but it wasn't something that like I woke up in the morning and I had to do it. It was literally just a recreational during the nightclub, in the party scene. But obviously in my day-to-day life, I wasn't drinking sneakily behind the door and stuff like that. So no. But growing up, I was affected by addiction. So just always surrounded by people that were, I guess, addicts. And actually Barry Woodward, a lot of his story takes place in Hume, in the Crescents in Manchester, and that's where I grew up as a child. So he was the type of people that we were around growing up as a child. So I've always been around it, but it's never been personal to me. Yeah.
Okay. So like, how did that, like you say you like kind of grew up around it.
Yeah.
How did that shape your worldview as a teenager?
Yeah, I guess you kind of think it's normal. Like the majority of people growing up, you know, they might have smoked cannabis. You know, it was just a normal thing. Like it wasn't like, oh, look at them over there, they take drugs. Yeah. Most people around me were doing it.
So you were so immersed in it.
Yeah, it just wasn't something, you know, as I was kind of growing up a little bit, I was kind of thinking, oh, you always saw the people that you thought were worse than you. You know, well, what I'm doing is not so bad because what they're doing down the road, that's worse. But obviously, for someone else, they're looking at me thinking what you're doing is terrible. And looking back, I was, you know, 14 in the park with vodka, then, you know, White Lightning and, you know, Tennant Super, Stella, you know. This was what we were doing. And then it was just easy enough to progress to a little bit of speed and just taking it and or just doing ridiculous things like sniffing poppers. Like, it was just ridiculous, really, when I look back. And I would hate to think my daughter doing those things because she's the same age now as when I started. But everyone was doing it. It was just the norm. So, yeah.
White Lightning. That was like the gateway drug. The one they used to ask people to go into the shop and buy it.
It was cheap and you knew you were going to get drunk.
It tastes like pee.
Yeah. Have you been drinking paint stripper?
Have I been drinking paint? Yeah.
It tastes like paint stripper.
It certainly tastes like it, yeah, when you have it. Blimey. So how do you get away from that then? Because if that's just culture, if that's just part of what you're in, obviously I know you now. Yeah. I never knew you back then with all that stuff. How do you go from being in all that to how do you survive, basically?
I mean, I guess that's what I was normally doing, was just surviving day to day. I was actually a single mum as well, a teenage mum. I got pregnant at 17 because obviously you're living that lifestyle, you're drinking, you know, making lots of bad choices under the influence of alcohol and drugs. I got pregnant at 17 and teenage mum, started with postnatal depression. So often at the same time as me drinking, I'm taking antidepressants, which they don't mix together. So it's often, you know, not working. So the majority of the week, I just hated my life. I was depressed. I'd wake up and just think, what have I done? All my friends are in college or working and I'm at home with this baby. That depends on me for everything. So for me, the weekend was an escape. It was like, I need to get that high to just forget that I'm a lone single parent. And then once the night out was finished, it's back to reality of, oh no, this is your reality. So it's just a constant cycle of surviving, really. And then I guess as you grow up a little bit, it drops off a little bit. But I got to a point where I realised I was opening a bottle of wine in the evening just by myself, just for a little bit of release. Because in society, when you're stressed, I look around me, how do you relieve that stress? You just have a drink. And I realised it was never an addiction, but I realised, Amber, come on, you shouldn't be sat at home having a glass of wine by yourself or 2 glasses of wine. You don't need to be doing that, do you know what I mean? But then for me, the only way I could get out of that was by moving away, because all my friends were doing it, and it's hard to sit there and say no, especially with drink. When you say no to drink, why? Yeah. Why do you not want to drink? Are you an alcoholic? Have you got a problem? Like, it's so frowned upon that you can't say no to a drink. Obviously, we say no to drugs. Oh yeah, we're not going to get the cocaine out. But when someone says no, they don't want the drink, it's
Yeah, looks like you got two heads, don't you?
Yeah, so it's really hard to say no. So obviously you can say no for a bit, but then if it's being put, you think, right, I'll just have a drink, and then a drink leads to 2, and then 3, and then before you know it, you can't drive home, you've got to get a taxi, and, So for me, I had to move away. I left Manchester where I lived and moved out to Leigh. And it took a little while for things to drop off because I'd still go back to my friends. But that was the only way I could stop doing it, was by removing myself from the situation.
So did you think it was having a child that kind of steered you in that direction to make those choices?
Not really, because I started drinking at 14 in the park. It was my peer group. It's what we were doing.
No, I mean like to get out of it.
To get out of it. Yeah. I guess so, but then by the time I moved, my son was, so we moved in 2008, so he was about 8 or something by that time. But I also, growing up in Manchester, a lot of my friends were in and out of prison. They were committing crimes, they were selling drugs, probably a lot of the boys were. And I used to look around and just think, that's not what I want for my son. And how do I save him from that? The culture in Manchester was getting worse with the gangs and shootings and stuff like that. And the only way I could think to save him, and ultimately myself, was to leave. So that was part of the reason of moving out of Manchester, yeah. But then it took a little while, like I say, the lifestyles were still crossing over, because I was still going back to Manchester to be part of that the weekend, and then coming back to Leigh in the week. And it took a few years before things really changed for me.
Obviously, you encountered God in some way, because back in your teenage years, back in your drinking years, and your little dabbles in cocaine and stuff, no presence of God there, was there not? No.
So when I was about 10, 11, Mum went to church. We went to Ivy Cottage in Manchester, and my mum was baptised, and we used to go to Spring Harvest, and so there was a couple of years of my life where we were fully immersed in church. But then for whatever reason, my mum decided to leave and walked away, and then we was that age that it just stopped for us as well. So there was always a little bit of seed planting there, a little bit of awareness that God exists. But he doesn't fit into my life, because on a Sunday morning I'm usually hungover, or I'm still usually partying. After party was at mine, church wasn't really fitting into that lifestyle, which meant God wasn't either. But like I say, I moved out of Manchester, and it was, I'd say, about 4 years after I moved out of Manchester, that's when, I had an encounter with God and went to church, yeah.
What did that look like? What is that?
Yeah, so another part of my journey had been that I'd had a termination earlier on in my life when I was in an abusive relationship with a guy that ended up beating me up at the end of our relationship. And that was kind of why I had a termination, because it was that kind of volatile relationship where I just couldn't have faced having a baby with him. And I'd never wanted to have another one. But unfortunately, I found myself pregnant again. I was a single parent of 2 children. And I found myself pregnant again, and all those feelings of dread and hating myself and hating my life and how am I going to look after these children, I ended up having another termination, and that actually broke me. It was a accumulation of lots of cycles, and it was just like, I can't be in this situation ever again. And the guilt of what I'd done and the shame of what I'd done was like just so much that for some reason I felt like I needed God to forgive me. And it was a bit like, well, where's that come from? Because I've not really been bothered about God, but all of a sudden this overwhelming feeling of needing God to forgive me for what I've done before I could even begin to think about forgiving myself. So the only place I could think to find God was in church. So I went to a local church in Leigh, and I was there for about 6 months thinking, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, it was quite a middle class church, there was a lot.
Ned Flanders type.
Yeah, it wasn't like, anything I'd experienced, and, I can be professional, I can be, but I couldn't be myself. I was thinking, they don't listen to the same music as me, they don't like doing the same things as me, like how am I meant to be like them? I'm not sure that I can be. But obviously over the 6 months, and that question when you come to church, oh, what brings you to church? I'm sat crying in the pew because I know I need God to forgive me for having a termination, but I'm not going to tell all these nice people that, the darkness inside my heart. So it's really hard that just being there for 6 months. There was a few people that I opened up with, obviously as you make friends. But after about 6 months, I met a guy who was a rapper, and he was a Christian, and he was from Manchester, and he used to be a drug dealer, and now he's not. And I saw him perform at an Easter event in Manchester, and he was actually really good, because I was thinking Christian rap. Come on, this is going to be awful. It's going to be dead cheesy. But he was actually really good. And that moment for me was God made it real for me, that you don't have to be like all these people, Amber. You can be still you, but I'm just going to mould you and shape you and chip away all the things that are not of me. And that was the moment when I thought, right, I can do this and I can be a Christian. So I was like 6 months at church just thinking, oh, what's going on? What's all this weird stuff? And then it became real for me then.
Right. Okay. And this same rapper is the man that you married, is
no,
it?
No,
okay.
I didn't know him there. It was a different rapper, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It is interesting how I do think a lot of people have this expectation that they're going to have to change so much, like become a completely different person.
Yeah.
When in actual fact, what God does is takes who you are and uses that, kind of just reshapes that a little bit.
Yeah, of course,
yeah, that's incredible. Like, so obviously, do you feel like you found that forgiveness then?
Yeah, so it took a while, because when I did become a Christian after those 6 months, it was amazing. Like, I felt like this new person, this new creation, and I felt like so much of my old self was gone. Like, I had this, my slate was wiped clean, but the abortions were still there. It was still something that I felt incredibly uncomfortable talking to people about. I guess I kept asking God to forgive me, but then just thinking, it's such a big thing that I've done, and I feel so bad about it that he can't possibly just forgive me just like that. And it took about 5 years, really, for me to receive that forgiveness. Because I believe that God forgave me the first time I asked him to forgive me, because I was truly sorry, but I just couldn't receive it. It was too hard to acknowledge that. I always describe it like it was on this shelf labelled too hard for God. But as you know, that shelf doesn't exist. There's nothing too hard for God. It was too hard for me to just accept it. So it took about 5 years before I really received that forgiveness. And I was at a conference for mums. And God gave me a vision while I was there, and it was a vision of him walking with my 2 babies in a field. Don't want to cry, Bryan. And that was just amazing. That was just incredible, and it was a real freeing and releasing moment for me. Yeah.
That's a really big thing, I think, and I thank you for actually saying that, because I think that it's something. Even if people have made peace with it, it's something people don't really want to talk about, because, especially in this day and age, it's such a volatile subject matter.
Makes people feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah, because like people are either so for it, so like, you know, it's a right, it's a woman's right, you know, this that and the other, or they're absolutely, you know, if you've had an abortion, you're of the devil and all this that and the other, and I think like where do you see like the Christian's role in that, in talking to other people about that? How do you bring both truth and grace into that conversation?
You know what, I think it's being loving and understanding, because I know some women it might be quite an easy decision to make to have that, but for most women to make a decision to get to that point of having an abortion, it's not been an easy decision. It's literally been the hardest decision that they've ever had to make in their life. And it's been a decision that they probably not wanted to make, but felt they had no choice. I remember the first time I had an abortion, I was in the queue outside the clinic to go inside, and there was this little old lady outside, and she was shouting across the road, and I couldn't hear it, and she was shouting, "Don't do it." I felt so angry, because I thought, well, you're not going to be there in the middle of the night when this baby's crying. You're not going to be there when if I have to stay in this relationship with this man who emotionally and mentally abuses me. Like, I was so angry inside, because it was a horrible decision I was making, but there was reasons behind it. Yeah. So it's really hard, because I think no decision, it's just not like a blanket thing, like it's right and it's wrong. Yeah. I think everybody's situation is very individual. And for me, it goes back further. It goes back to needing to teach our children their value and their worth, and not making decisions that lead to those things. So I was, living crazily. I didn't care about myself. I wasn't respecting my body. Contraception, I wasn't really very intelligent around contraception. It's giving people education to not get in those situations to begin with, because once you're in it and you have to make that decision, it literally changes your whole entire life. So it's just not such a easy thing. So when we judge people for it, it's why I don't want to share it quite often, because I just don't want to hear what people have got to say, because they weren't there with me at the time.
So volatile, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so hard. Obviously now I would say not to have an abortion, but I understand people end up in situations where that can seem like the only option. But we know with God there's always different options. But at that time when I made those decisions, I didn't have a God perspective.
So how old were you?
When I had those, that they were like, oh gosh, it had to be maybe early 20s and then later 20s.
So if you could go back now to your early 20-something self, what would you say to her?
Oh, please don't get in this relationship to begin with. Do you know what I mean? Like that would be my first thing, because if you're not in that relationship where you feel scared for yourself, you're not going to then feel scared for your baby to be born.
That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like we're essentially the abortion. You've already gone too far.
Yeah.
Like the abortion thing isn't going too far.
Yeah.
It was making the choices to begin with that have led down,
of course,
to that path that went too far.
Yeah. I always say I was always living in the consequences of my own choices. I don't blame anybody else for a lot of the things that I did, because it was consequences of my own choices, and I had a choice to get into that relationship or not. And once you're in it, it's much harder to leave. But yeah, I was always living in the consequences of my own choices.
Yeah. And of course, you do have kids now. Yeah. You got a lovely little boy called Azariah, who has been through some stuff himself. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that? Because, like, not to jump the gun or anything, but you were literally told by doctors that the best thing to do would be to abort him.
Yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about that.
So obviously I've got my son who's 25 and a daughter who's 14, and then I've gone on to get married and have Azariah, who is now 3.5. And just before we had Azariah, we had a miscarriage as well, which is the first time I'd ever had a miscarriage. So we were already going into the pregnancy with Azariah thinking, is it going to happen again? Are we going to get to keep this baby? So we didn't actually, we told ourselves we'd get to the 20-week scan and then we'd relax a bit and we'd celebrate. We'd not even bought anything for the baby, or people were like, saying, have you got a baby list? And I was just like, no, because I just don't know if I'm going to get to keep this baby. I don't want to get my hopes up. So 20-week scan, we told ourselves we were going to relax. The 20-week scan, they couldn't get the views on the baby's heart. So this was the day before my 40th birthday. My husband had planned a little weekend away for us at this really nice place for a little retreat. So that weekend we just spent praying. Like, what are we going to do? Like, we prayed and we actually went back, I think, the Tuesday the next week to be scanned by a cardiologist at the fetal medicine unit in Manchester. And to get to it, you have to walk through the normal antenatal clinic. So everybody sat there all excited about their babies with their partners, and we're literally walking through this clinic to go to another bit where we're going to be told, what are we going to be told about our baby? So what we were told is that he had a hole in his heart and that he had transposition of the great arteries. So the two arteries that come off your heart, they were basically in the opposite place. There was going to be limitations on his life. He was going to need at least 3 surgeries before he was 5, and then potentially more. So our 3 options were, first option was to terminate the pregnancy and not continue anymore. The second option was to continue, but to know that there's going to be all these things that need to happen. And the third option was, if we were continuing, to have an amniocentesis, because heart defects can often accompany things like Down syndrome.
Do you feel like those options were explained to you without any bias?
Well, I mean, you think that was the order they were given to us in as well. Right. So option 1 is a termination. And I always feel like the doctors go worst case scenario first. But that was number 1 option. And obviously I've had 2 abortions. It's not something that I've never, gone and done. And I always think, what would old Amber have done in that situation, knowing that I've had abortions before for less, if you like, but what would she have done in those situations? But I wasn't old Amber, because I was new Amber, and I was now a Christian. I had a faith, and I was married to my husband, who is a Christian, and he had a faith. So I knew straight away in my heart what the option was. I didn't even let Marvin speak. I told the doctor straight away. I said, well, we're Christians and we're not having an abortion. Like, that's not the option. That's not even to be considered, because they were saying, go away and think about your options. We said, we don't need to think about that. Yeah. And we also don't need another test, because it makes no difference. We have an amniocentesis and you tell us there's another issue. Is that going to make us change our mind? No, it's not. It makes no difference. So we just carry on.
It's a good job you did.
Yeah.
Because he's doing all right, isn't he?
Yeah, of course. So, even that prognosis of 3 surgeries before 5, they were never going to be able to fix his heart, really. There would always be limitations on him. So he's had 2 open heart surgeries, one at 13 days old and one at 2.5 years old, which was just last April. And his heart is fully corrected. He shouldn't need anything else. There's a small possibility that maybe in the future, when he's an adult, he might need a small intervention, but that's only a possibility. No more surgeries. He can play competitive sports if he wants, which before they said there would be limitations on that. His oxygen saturations are 98, 99, which they normally were like 70. And he's just living his life.
That's great. You so a bit of a segue, not the most not the most well worked out one. Yeah. But everything that you've talked about here is that informed your book, because you have a book out. You've written a book, a novel. Yeah. It's just been released. Yeah. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So obviously I've been through so much, and you meet people and they hear your story. They say, oh, you should write a book, and you always think, oh yeah, I'm going to write a book one day. And I think it was through lockdown, when we had a bit more time, I thought, you know what, I'll start writing. So I started writing an autobiography, and it was awful. I hated it. It just felt like so horrible, and how am I going to tell this story? And people in it, I don't want them to be in it, but they're part of my story, and I don't want to tell bits about my mum's life, but she's my mum and she's in my story, and it was just awful. And I thought, I don't want anyone ever to read this. It's horrible. But I'd written it, and there was a bulk of work there, and I was connected to some people that were writing at the time. And I remember being on a Zoom for some writers, just trying to get a bit of inspiration, really. And someone said, why don't you turn it into fiction? And I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing, because then the characters don't have to be the characters, and the story doesn't have to be the story. I can change it. And it felt so much more comfortable, and like such a relief that I could actually share some of the things that I've been through, but in a fictional way. So the book is based on the story of 3 women and the journey that they go through. It's set in Manchester, and their lives and stuff that they experience. So a lot of the experiences in the book are things that I've been through. So teenage pregnancy, abortions, domestic violence, drug and alcohol use, but then that journey to faith. Sometimes we think that when we become a Christian, then life's going to just all be right, and we're never going to have any problems again. But as we've just spoken about with Azariah, my life didn't go like that at all. It actually took on immense challenges that we had to overcome. And it's that journey as well, that as Christians, it's not just a magic wand and things are just all rosy. You're going to face some challenges as well, but the way you're going to handle them and walk through them is going to be different from how you handled them before. And that's what my story is. It's a story of hope. I want to show people that there is hope, that even though you're going through all this hard stuff and you might think that you're too far gone, that you're not too far gone, and that there's always hope when God's involved.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got my book here.
Yeah, let's see it.
So it's called Running From Myself, because all my life, I guess I felt like that's what I was doing. I was always trying to move house, get a new boyfriend, get a new college course, get a new job. You always think these things are going to make you better, but you're running from one thing to another, and ultimately, who's always there? You. And you can't run from yourself. I tried. So I felt like that's what I was always doing, running from myself. And that was the title of the book. So yeah. Okay.
So you can find that where?
So you can find it on Amazon. You can buy paperbacks and the ebook on there. You can buy the paperback directly from me on my website, which is www.itsafaiththing.com. And obviously, if you buy it directly from me, then it's a signed copy as well. You can also get the ebook on Apple Books, Kobo Books, things like that.
There you go. Yeah. So buy it if that sounds like something you want to read, or maybe somebody you know that
of course,
you think would want to read it. Then do it. My wife's read it.
Okay.
I'm not much of a reader. Okay. It's got to be said, unless it's comic books or books about movies. Yeah. I don't tend to read. Yeah. But my wife's read it. Yeah. She said it was enjoyable, if somewhat. Dark. Obviously, like my wife's the kind of person who reads children's books and things. Okay, yeah. She said, but
so it's not, it's a little bit gritty, but it's not like got swearing in it. I've tried not to, it tackles hard subjects, but it's not, a lot of Christian fiction will say that it's clean Christian fiction. It's not clean Christian fiction because it's tackling real life subjects. But I also
when people say clean Christian, that to me that just sounds like sanitized, because that isn't life. Real. Yeah. It's like if that's what your life becomes once you're a Christian, maybe. Yeah. Although personally I don't think it does. It makes no sense. I remember this. There was an advert for the censors. This is in the UK. Once again, sorry Americans. It was like an advert for the BBFC censoring board or something. And it was a cop getting a criminal into the back of a van. And the criminal's like, "Oh, these cuffs are really chafing me."
Oh, yeah.
And if you remember that one. But I feel like sometimes that's what Christians expect of... And that's the way a lot of Christian movies go, which is why they don't do particularly well outside of Christian audiences. Because it's not clean, it's just sanitized. That's not the way life is. Life doesn't work like that. So but
I understand that people want sometimes I want to watch something that doesn't have swearing in it and things like that, but it's still it's not a dirty Christian fiction, because I was thinking, well, what's the opposite of clean Christian fiction? Is it dirty Christian fiction? It's not. It's real. It's real and it's gritty.
And that's the context in it. It's like, if you want to do something that's obviously no swearing, this, that and the other, then maybe don't write a story about drugs, and gangsters and things like that. So but totally get that. But all the best with the book. Hope it sells and does well. And do you have any ideas for further ones down the line?
Yeah, so this year my first plan is to do the audio book for Running From Myself, which obviously is going to be a bit of time recording that, because I'm going to do that myself. But then the second book is bubbling there in my head, and it's going to be a continuation of this first book. So there are characters in the book that I feel like they didn't get their chance for redemption, if you like. So there's still more of their story to come. That was the joy about it becoming fiction as well, that the characters became alive in themselves and had their own life. There's going to involve some like prison. So I've never been in prison. So I've got some interviews lined up with some friends who've been in prison, because I want to understand their experiences as a woman, what that's like, and a woman with children and things like that. Because that's going to be a little bit of what happens in the second book with one of the characters. So you won't know who any of the characters are from not reading it, but that's fine. That's fine. But so that's going to come.
If you stick Batman in there at some point.
Yeah, maybe that really will take us out of reality. But but it took me a long time, this book, so I don't anticipate that's not going to be out, like I'm going to say, in 6 months' time it's going to be ready. It's really not. I've got a toddler at home who keeps me awake at night, so it will just get done when it gets done, really. And that's the joy of being self-published as well. Yeah. That is in my own time and when I can do it. So it's coming, it's there, the story's there, but it's not anywhere near. No, nothing's written.
Excellent. All right, Amber, thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you. And all the best with the book.
Thank you very much.
Bye.